Hey guys, it's Mama de Cinco and Cinco. If you want to hear how an induction turns into 33 hours of labor, followed by an emergency C-section with a 6-day stay at the hospital, stay tuned. Up next, my labor and delivery story. Pregnancy takes about 40 weeks. And around week 32 is when you get to the point where you start to have symptoms of possible false labor. So many people refer to them as Braxton Hicks. You might have the contractions, you might, feel a little bit more discharge down there, a little more damp than what you normally would. So your OB, when you go into your appointments, which is now probably about weekly, they start to warn you, hey, if you have contractions or you're feeling some tightening in your uterus for about 5 minutes apart and they're lasting a minute for an hour, you probably should make your way over to the hospital. So around week 32, my stepmom was in town and she and I went out to dinner. And while I was there, I noticed that I was having some contractions. So I began to, unbeknownst to her, monitor them. And yes, they were coming a minute apart and we had been there for about an hour and a half. At which point I said to her, hey, I've been having contractions for the last hour. They're a minute apart. I think I might need to go to the hospital. She told me to give my boyfriend a call, and I called him and let him know, hey, I finished eating. I'm on my way home. We probably need to go to the doctor or the hospital because I'm having contractions. When I get home, I realize I have not packed my hospital bag, and we just throw a few items in the bag, and I'm like, okay, gotta get to the hospital. Praying that this is not the time that I'm going to deliver this baby because I do not have my braids in. I have not made my appointment to be waxed. And despite everything being in place, I'm just not ready to have this baby. I actually was starting work on another degree about 3 or 4 weeks before my due date of September the 12th. And I was just trying to hold out until the semester started so that I can get there and successfully start so that Title IX could come into play. If you don't know what Title IX is, go ahead, Google it. It is awesome to make sure moms are able to be mothers and also make sure that they are able to survive in an academic setting if you happen to be in grad school like myself. So get to the hospital. They hooked me up to the monitor. Yes, I am having contractions. Yes, they are coming a minute apart, but I'm not dilating. When I got there, I was about 1.5 centimeters dilated. You have to be 10, and you should be progressing every hour. So if I got there at 1, when an hour went by and they checked me again, I should have been at 2 to say that I'm in active labor. So leaving the hospital, you okay, Plunkin? Leaving the hospital that night, I was told that it was false labor and I was dilating and to just take it easy. So got into my appointment the next day with my OB, and she let me know that I probably needed to go on bed rest if I intended to make it to the start of the semester. So I started to take it easy. I cut back on walking, which was something I was doing to make sure I had an easy labor. Pinning that. My ideal labor was going to be unmedicated. It was going to be vaginal. I made a birth plan. I did the research. I took the parenting classes. Anyone who spoke to me throughout my pregnancy, oftentimes, you have people who walk up to you with the horror stories. It's going to be horrible. You don't know how this pain is going to be. And I would respond, my body's made for this. I'm going to let my body work through this. We'll see what happens. Remember that. With this birth plan in tow, I was ready. So fast forward, we're at about week 38 and I'm already starting the semester, and I go back to the hospital because I again am experiencing some terrible back pain in combination. Sorry, gotta get Cinco. Want to take your. This is Cinco. In combination with said contractions, but I get back to the hospital and again they say, yes, you are dilating, but you aren't progressing enough. I am in terrible pain, which at around this time I'm considered full term. After 37, they say that you can give birth to the baby and the likelihood of them ending up in NICU is slim to none. So at this point, my doctor is telling me that any day you can go. I have progressed from 1 centimeter to 2 centimeters dilated. So in my head, I'm thinking, soon Pittsburgh. Passy? Let's find the Passy. I mean, I was so uncomfortable. I could barely sit. I could barely lay down. I did a lot of crying. I was using Epsom salt. I took painkillers. My friend Chelsea brought over a heating pad. And for whatever reason, my body was just starting to give out on me. And come to find out, the weight of the baby basically threw out my back or put too much pressure on a nerve, and as a result I was unable to function for a few days. But as he progressed down my vaginal passage, I then was freed up and was able to get back to regular, I guess, motions and planning. Somewhere between week 38 and 39, a hurricane actually hit the city of Tallahassee and knocked out about 90% of the lights and electricity. One thing you do not want to be in the midst of 90% of the city losing electricity is pregnant. I was very uncomfortable. I was very drained. Just the entire situation of not knowing whether or not I was going to go into labor at any given moment. Being, hungry and not being able to, heat up something that I would want to eat. Like, I was literally eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, or we were driving to whatever restaurant was open. Yes, Pumpkin. And trying to eat something to keep myself sustained and drinking as much water as possible to stay hydrated. One of my sorority sisters, eventually her side of the city got power, and we were able to go over there and stay for a period until we got electricity back in our apartment. So that was that. That week, once we got electricity back, was week 39. At that visit, my doctor basically checked me and said, okay, you're at 2.5, almost 3. At any point in time, your water is going to break. And I'm thinking to myself, I need to get this kid out before anything else happens. I mean, a hurricane hit the panhandle of Florida. What's the likelihood? A category 1 knocked out the entire, city's electricity. What's the likelihood? I got to get him out. So I'm like, what do we need to do? The doctor says that we can schedule an induction for the following Monday, which is his original due date. But in the meantime, we could try some natural remedies. From about week 35, I had been drinking red raspberry leaf tea to assist with, my uterus contracting after baby was here, and possibly, help with the thinning of my cervix so that I could have him closer to the original due date. Because some people say that when you're pregnant for the first time, you're going to deliver, that you may go over, and you technically can remain pregnant up to 42 weeks. From what I hear, most doctors won't let you go to 42, but a midwife will. So you have that option of, allowing your body to kick into gear before you're asked whether or not you want an induction or your membrane stripped of some sort. Well, schedule the induction. In the meantime, I go home, I get a yoga ball, I'm bouncing on the yoga ball trying to get the kid out, I'm doing yoga poses, I'm back to walking as much as I possibly can, I'm eating spicy food, and then there's the tried and true, the same way you got them in there, the same way you can get them out. So we did a lot of trying to get him out that way, and nothing was working. So that weekend came, and we decided that we would just enjoy it for what it was. At this point, he was going to be here on September the 12th, or so we thought, and we just needed to enjoy the last few days that we had as, single parents. So Saturday, we get up, clean the entire house, and basically plan one last, dream date night, which for us is nothing more than just going to get gourmet burgers and going to the movie theater. Did just that. Came home, did a belly cast so that I can have a keepsake of what it was to be 39, 40-ish weeks pregnant, and that was that. So, Monday, September the 12th is here. It is due date. I'm technically 40 weeks. I am scheduled to go into the hospital at 6 p.m. that night to be induced. That day I met with my professors. You okay? He's talking. He's learning to exercise his voice. So don't be alarmed. So that day I made sure that I ate a meal high in carbs because I thought I was going to have a vaginal birth, and as a result I've heard that it was going to be very taxing on my body. So being the past athlete that I am, I basically load up on carbs to make sure that I would have enough energy. I ate like a full pasta bowl at Olive Garden, and came home and tried to take baby's down for a nap, so hopefully I can finish before he wakes back up. Time to leave the house. Get all of our baby bags down in the car, and on the ride there I stopped at Chick-fil-A. But also on the way there, one of the things that my boyfriend did to try and keep me calm was basically play a list of all of my favorite songs since we've been dating and throughout the pregnancy. But it didn't work. In my head, I'm thinking, oh my God, like, despite all of the classes that we've taken, despite the fact that we've had 10 months to prepare for this day, we're actually going to the hospital, and for what I thought was to deliver this baby either sometime tonight or at best sometime early Tuesday morning on the 13th. But that was not the case. When we got to the hospital, we got out the car, it was a full moon. I was like, oh my God, this is such a good sign. Yay, get up to the labor and delivery floor and actually see our name. The room that we're assigned to is room 5, and I'm thinking, oh yay, Cinco, we have the 5th room, the baby's gonna be the 5th. This is a sign that everything's gonna work out very, very well. These are legends. Oh my God, the universe is conspiring for our success. In walks the nurse who actually saw us when we came in one time when I went into false labor. We have familiar faces. She's making sure that we have all of, you know, the snacks, and I'm excited. So I get into the room. I'll post pictures of that as well. I delivered at Capital Regional here in Tallahassee after taking a tour between the 2 hospitals in the city, and it was everything that they said it would be, despite the fact that my birth did not go as planned according to the birth plan. Get situated in the room, and they come in to insert the cervidil.
This is home, sweet home. I'm currently at the hospital, waiting for Mami to come out of the bathroom. So this is where you're going to be for the next couple of hours until we get out. And she's out of the bathroom. She's naked. And we will be back.
Is this some kind of agent, cervidil or cervidol? I'm not sure which one is the correct pronunciation. They insert this kind of, I guess, a gel onto your cervix, and the way that the nurse explained it to me was it was meat tenderizer for your cervix. So basically this concoction is going to help my cervix to thin out and open up. I'm already at 2.5 when I get to the hospital. I just need to get to 10. I'm thinking this is going to be easy with, you know, this cervidil. My birth plan stated that I didn't want to be hooked up to any IVs, but I did have a hemp lock-in, which basically is an access point if an emergency does happen. They don't have to search for a vein. So I wasn't hooked up to an IV. I was allowed to move around freely. One of the managements of pain that I listed was to get into the jacuzzi, using the yoga ball. They brought all these things in to make sure that I had them readily available once the contractions started to pick up as my cervix thinned out. But nothing happened. They put it in and I went to sleep, and I would say for about 2 to 3 hours I was fine. I could feel like a slight, I guess, tingling or like a sensitive to touch, like burning sensation, but it was nothing that I could not manage. Went to sleep. That was around 9 o'clock was once everything got going. Once all admitting was done, even though I did pre-admission, I had to double check and make sure everything was fine. Around, I would say, maybe midnight, 1 o'clock, I woke up and I realized that I was in a lot of pain, and I buzzed for the nurse to come in, and she checked and said, yes, you know, your contractions are picking up. They're actually quite close. Let me check you. One of the things that I had on my birth plan was also that I did not want to have unnecessary vaginal exams. So if I didn't feel like I needed to have one, I didn't want the nurse to check me. So in this case, I'm feeling a lot of pressure. I actually felt like I had to push, but I know I just knew I shouldn't have been that close that soon. So she checked me and she said, at best, you're maybe still 2.5. I could stretch and say 3. We're gonna give you a little bit more time, you know, just try and take it easy. I would say I slept for maybe another 30 minutes and I woke up and I was just in a lot of pain and immediately started to whine, which then led to crying, and woke my boyfriend up, and I asked him, you know, can you help me? Like, I'm very, very, very uncomfortable. I feel like I had to push. I feel like I had to pee. I kept going to the restroom trying to. I was sitting on the toilet backwards just because I had read that would help relieve some pain or some pressure, and it did, but I could not, I guess, scratch the itch that I wanted to of just being a little bit more comfortable. He got the yoga ball, put on my playlist that I was using to help manage pain, and nothing was giving. I remember at one point I just looked up to him, my eyes just filled with tears, and I said, I want to go home, like I want to try again. Like I was Kevin Hart, I was not ready at all. And maybe like 15 more minutes of me bouncing and rolling on the ball, and him telling me, you know, all of my affirmations that I had wrote down and told him that he had to remember. He did, but it did not work. And I said that I didn't want an epidural. I was at this point just trying to figure out what can take the edge off. So I wanted something that could take the edge off. So the nurse came in and she said, you know, before I can give you something else, I need to check and see whether or not you progress. Some people deliver babies in hours, so I can understand why she needed to, you know, check me again. She checked and she said, no, you're at 3, a good 3, but one thing she noticed was that I had some kind of, I guess, abnormality on my cervix, and she asked had I had any surgeries or anything, to which I responded no. And I thought back that I actually had a colposcopy done, which is where they clip a small sample of your cervix out and send it to test it for cancer cells, when I had an abnormal pap smear back in undergrad, to which had caused this scarring on my cervix. And as a result, my cervix, well, it would be a result that my cervix would not be able to open up past 3 centimeters. And again, you need to get to 10 to be able to push. Baby's head was down, she could feel it. I was just stuck at 3. She gave me the option of her loosening up the scar tissue to see whether or not that would then allow me to open up, but it didn't work because, well, it had not worked at that point. She just told me that it would be very uncomfortable and suggested that I take something like an epidural to help me, you know, with that pain. But because I was not hooked up to any fluids, that left me about maybe like an hour, or I think between 30 minutes and an hour of them trying to flush my system with this IV fluid, and then they could call the anesthesiologist. So for that time period where I'm trying to get this bag of IV fluid into me, I just had to manage the pain, and it was not what I thought it could be. I think under different circumstances of knowing that the pain was actually helping me progress, I probably could have mentally prepared myself to see it through. But the fact that I'm experiencing this pain and I'm not going to be able to hit my end goal of 10 centimeters and being able to push and vaginally deliver my son, I think it just maybe irritated me and made me even more uncomfortable and unable to deal with the pain at that point. So once they got the IV fluid in, the anesthesiologist then comes to the room. He was so nice, but at that point I was just still uncomfortable, in pain, and cranky. So I agreed to have the epidural done. I love delivering at Capital Regional because they were so attentive. Everyone who entered the room read over my birth plan, because we made sure that the OB had a copy, that each nurse throughout the schedule changes had a copy, that we had a copy in case something happened to the copies of the copies. Yeah. So the anesthesiologist comes in. He's very nice and is getting ready to administer the epidural. I make sure that I don't look at anything, because I heard it was a really, really, really big needle.
Hey guys, so I'm the fourth. I'm Dad.
Which is why baby is the fifth. Cinco.
So with the epidural, I wanted to see everything and I didn't want to be spared.
I didn't want him to see everything. I wanted him to spare himself.
I didn't want to be spared no expense to everything that's taking place.
You don't want to see all.
I never got this. I always wanted to see what everything was.
It's on YouTube.
So, the anesthesiologist came in, and I was trying to be like super close to him. I wanted to be like an assistant, like that close. They were telling me, no, you'd have to back up, and because a lot of the stuff that they have was sterile, so me being in there would just contaminate it all, and I didn't think so. But either way, he pulls out a needle, and the needle is about maybe this big, somewhere around this range, and he screws something onto it, and he stops, and he pulls out this little really, really, really hair thin needle, and he starts making small pokes into Quay, and when he makes these pokes, you can just see little beads of blood there, and I was like, oh my god, this is like super, super weird. Then he takes the really big needle, goes back over with those little pokes, and he's injecting whatever fluid it is, and he puts a long tube in like the last one closer to the bottom, and there's a lot of blood. There's like blood like seeping down the side of her, like literally right down her spine. He puts this long tube in there, and I guess this is supposed to like numb everything all together, and puts this long tube in there. He kind of wipes a little bit, puts this big plastic sheet on her back.
I remember feeling that.
And then he asks to question if she could feel anything. And,
a cool sensation.
And I'm just like, this is freaking neat, because I always wanted to see everything that's going on. But after he asks her that, then he says, okay, you can lean her back, and before he leaves, they tell her about the whole button, the little trigger that she has to push for every time she feels a little pain. And they were like, it should happen within 30 minutes or so. Quay decides to hold out on it and, don't want to use it.
I had watched The Business of Being Born, and I was petrified that if I had too much of anything, like Pitocin, whatever was in the epidural, that it would impact the baby, and like as a result his heart rate would slow down, and then they would tell me that I would have to have an emergency C-section because baby was unsafe. At this time I didn't realize that I was going to have an emergency C-section no matter what. So that was that with the epidural.
At any rate, she decided she wasn't going to use it when she wanted to use it. So she tried to continue to bear the pain of everything.
I would just take just a little to take the edge off.
It took a while for it to soak in, so when it finally did, that's when she finally knocked out. And I mean, was out.
So that's like Tuesday at maybe, I would say 3-4 o'clock in the morning is once I finally give in to using the epidural, and now I am out. So anything that I'm probably going to keep referring back to Dad, because it was all a blur until I would say they unhooked the epidural. And Dr. Bryant, who is my OB at Jasmine's Women's Center, I'll leave her information below, because she was amazing at advocating. It actually took me on during my 3rd trimester, which is something a lot of OBs don't do because we relocated then. She suggested that I have my water broken because it might speed the process along. So they break my water. I don't know what that looks like. I didn't feel any pain because I was under the epidural. You seen the water break. I'm assuming it was a hook because that's what I Googled.
It was like a long plastic hook, and it was like really, really tiny hook that they pushed up inside there, and you just see them just doing something like this, some little jerking motion, and then I guess eventually she must have felt something, because they had, I don't know how deep it went in there, but it was a long tube, and they had to push it in there, and she was doing this little jerk, the nurse was doing a little jerking motion, and then she pulled it out, And then she put her finger in there. She did a little turn or whatever. And then she pulled out. And then eventually you just seen splash. I was like, it was weird because it's like a pinkish, palish color material or whatever. And
which is good. As long as it's not like green or brown, the baby hasn't had their first stool in there, which means that they were going to be able to allow me to labor a little longer.
Yeah, so they did that, and it was a lot. And at first it was like a quick gush, and then everything stopped, and then periodically through the time period, gushes. It would just come out gushes. On its own. I was like, ah.
And because I got the epidural, I didn't have. I don't know who said something about a walking epidural, but when I asked about one, it wasn't a possibility because I wanted to be able to walk. I didn't want to be confined to the bed. I didn't want the IV fluids. There was a lot of stuff that I did not want according to my birth plan, but when planning for birth, you should know that things are going to happen just to get the baby there. Hindsight being 2020. I also had to have a catheter inserted. They let him see everything. They were 2 steps away from giving. Had I been able to vaginally deliver, the nurse had already told him that my OB would let him put on, scrubs and actually like birth the baby. And we were all excited about that being a possibility at the time. So that's around, I would say, I'm set. I've had the catheter inserted. My water has been broken, and now I'm okay with hitting the trigger. Deep sleep. All of Tuesday, from my memory, was me going in and out of sleep, waking up, and I'm now on a liquid diet. So drinking as much broth as I can get down, as much juice as I can get down, ice chips and water. Tuesday. Well, no, Tuesday like 11. I was 11 at night. I remember being put on oxygen because the baby's heart rate was starting to.
Things got pretty quiet because by this time she was in and out of sleep.
They also gave me Pitocin Tuesday afternoon, and Pitocin is supposed to help the contract. I remember Dr. Bryant coming in and saying, we're going to start you on Pitocin. Because I watched The Business of Being Born, I was horrified about having Pitocin. I was afraid that it was going to, cause the baby to go into distress. But they assured me that they would give me the lowest possible dose and just allow my body to, I guess, use it for its benefit. So I didn't have any negative side effects, as far as I know, with Pitocin because I was given a low dose, and eventually it was turned off once the baby's heart rate did, start doing something finicky. And that's when they put me on the oxygen, and I would say that's when things started to, I guess, lean more towards a C-section having to be performed, because at that point I had been trying to labor naturally for almost 24 hours at this point.